Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, we accuse Mustard of committing the crime on the Isle of Armor with a Kung Fu bear. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and joining me, as always, is Mark Mitchell. We've got a good show for you today. We're going to be talking about the news from the week, including that Pokemon DLC Direct that happened last week. And then on Thursday, we're going to be determining the best Nintendo game of the decade. But in the meantime, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing so good. Patrick, can I tell you that in December, I mean, this part you know, I don't need to tell you this part, that in December, we saw each other a ton.
So much.
Yeah, because we were like at least 3 days a week.
For basically the entire month of December until we called it quits
For the year.
On December 19th. That was the last time we saw each other.
Right. And then I saw you last week, but
Mhm.
I still feel like, and then we haven't seen each other until tonight,
Right.
but I still feel like after I got so used to seeing you all the time in December,
Yes.
that this past week felt like an eternity.
I was thinking the same thing when you walked in. I was like, oh man, it's Mark. I haven't seen this guy it's been 1 week.
It's been 1 week.
1 week.
Which is to say, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. Also, can I tell you, Mark, that as I was reading our way through like the intro there, you kind of like kicked your foot out a little bit, and I was not expecting to see something out of the corner of my eye from under the table just like move.
I could see it through you.
You could.
Yeah. I didn't mean to. I was just stretching.
No, and it is well within your right to stretch. I had like a moment of panic where I was like, is there an animal in my house? What is happening?
I would have handled the situation. If there was an animal in your house as a guest,
Right.
I would have done that for you.
You would have tackled it for me.
I don't know that I'd
You
tackle
would've-
it, but I would have done something. I would have handled the situation.
I see. Tried to make contact with the animal. Here's an animal you can make contact with, Sonic the Hedgehog. My copy of Sonic Forces. You can try to borrow it by emailing us at Nintendo Cartridge Society
At gmail.com.
and give us a mailing address where we can send my copy of the video game Sonic Forces.
Going on 3 years
Yeah, a long
of
time.
the Sonic Forces borrowing program.
It's also on sale on the Nintendo eShop right now for $10. But
Don't do that to
waste your
yourself.
money.
There's a thriving program that you can be a part of.
Right. There's a list that you can get on. And wait, how long did you say that we've been doing this? 3 years? Probably about that long at this point.
I think it'll be 3 years in whenever the game was released, September.
Great point. That's probably right.
Yeah.
Well, get on that list, and then you can play it for as long as you want, and you send it back. It costs you nothing. It's the perfect program. Mark, are you ready to get into what we've been playing this week?
Yeah, let's do it. There was, of course, a Pokemon Direct last week.
Mm-hmm.
And in that Pokemon Direct, they introduced us to the idea that there's a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX coming in March, and that there's a demo available right now.
Right. And so, we will get to further details about what was in that Direct later on in this episode. We both took the time to play through the Mystery Dungeon demo, which is to say, spent about 40 minutes playing with this thing. It's not a super generous demo.
No, not at all.
Have you, previous to this, played a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game?
No, the only kind of like rogue-like game that I've played is Sheeran the Wanderer DS, which I love. I would give almost anything for a Sheeran the Wanderer on Switch.
Really?
But it's weird, like the other types of games like that, I've never really been able to connect with the same way. Maybe it's because Sheeran has a ferret, and I like that.
Yeah. So it does Sheeran also? Sorry, I don't mean to breeze right past. It has a ferret. That's amazing. But is that also like a kind of turn-based, like the gameplay in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is very strange to me, because it is turn-based in that like when you move a square, that is basically the turn, right? Like,
Right.
There aren't like menus that pop up at every single like trigger every turn.
Yeah.
You can open a menu like to choose which attack you're going to use, but by and large, it's just no one else acts until you do.
Yes, and that is my memory of how Sheer and the Wanderer works. Are
Sure.
very similar. Like it's definitely not It's not like menu.
Yeah. Yeah, or
and I
like
don't think it's pure action
Fire
either.
Emblem-y.
So I do like the way this demo opens. Which, having never played the original game, have you played the original ones?
Yeah. So I as soon as I turned the game on, like got to the thing that you're about to describe, I was like, oh, I've played. I think I played this on DS, because it was released at the same time on GBA and DS.
Oh.
Which is crazy, and I love Pokemon Company being like, okay, we'll put a Pokemon game on your new thing, Nintendo, but also the old thing.
We're hedging our bets.
Yeah.
This weird 2-screen thing, I'm not sure.
I don't buy it. And so I know that I at least started the game there, and that was during the period where like I wasn't playing Pokemon games at all. Well after my first sort of bout of playing them, and well before the more recent years of me actually like playing the games. So I don't think I got very far. I probably played more in this demo than I played on the DS.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about the opening.
Okay, so the opening. First of all, I really like the art style. It's kind of like a very illustrated children's book, watercolor type aesthetic, which I think is really cool.
So I will agree with that. I wish it was tighter though.
Mm-hmm.
The aesthetic of it I think is really cool. I like the way the colors are like kind of washed out beyond the like dark outline of the characters. I think that's cool. But generally speaking, I just wish it was of higher fidelity. Like it looks like it's a DS game or maybe a 3DS game.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think it's that bad. I think it definitely shows like its budget status.
Yeah.
But I didn't find it off-putting.
Okay.
And then there's like a orb of light that is like, hey, but it's not Navi.
Listen.
But basically you go through like a quiz and it asks you like a bunch of multiple choice questions, and at the end it assigns you a Pokemon.
Yeah. Presumably based on the answers that you gave.
Right. With a ripcord that in case you want to change what they gave you, because I got Mudkip.
I got Mudkip.
Oh, really? that actually, I'm not that surprised. That makes perfect sense to me.
I don't know what that means. Okay,
that we would get the same.
Oh, yeah, that is funny.
Yeah.
So I actually started it twice.
Okay.
Because I played through it, or played through like the opening, was assigned Charizard, and then I was like, man, I've been doing this for like 5 minutes and I'm not playing this game yet. I'm bored, so I switched over to Dragon Quest. And then when I got back to it, like it hadn't saved yet. So I had to do the quiz all over again. And let me tell you this: the quiz is not the same.
What?
Yes. So it asked me. I don't know if it was entirely a different set of questions, but it was they were different questions.
And you ended up with Mudkip.
I ended up with Mudkip the second time.
So I was actually glad that I got Mudkip, because I've recently, especially after Sword and Shield, am feeling the need, or not need, but like the desire to play Pokemon games with Pokemon I am unfamiliar with.
Yes.
Because that just seems more fun to me than playing with the same characters that I'm used to over and over, mostly Gen 1.
Yeah.
So I was Mudkip, and I was like, yes, I'm going to be Mudkip, even though they give me an out. I am into being Mudkip.
You don't have to be Mudkip if you don't want to be Mudkip.
And then it's like, pick your partner.
Yes.
So I was like, all right, not going to pick Charizard, not going to pick Pikachu. Instead, I went with Trico, a character I don't like. But I was like, whatever, it's just a demo. Name my Trico Big Boy.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm Ace. We were rolling. I thought the demo was fine.
Yeah, I was I almost immediately remembered why I stopped playing the game in the first place. Is that it feels very like slow and everything. I mean, I'm sure once it gets more difficult and you have to like strategize about how you're actually going to approach stuff, that it feels like a meaningful experience. But there are some quality of life improvements in this version of the game that kind of you can put it on auto even more than like what the game already is. So in a lot of ways it feels like it plays itself. And you're just like, it's just easier to like hold L and like make the character walk around the dungeon.
It's what I wanted out of a demo in that I
Mhm.
felt like I was like, I have experienced what I wanted to experience of this, but I don't feel the need to like pick up the full thing when it
Yeah,
comes out in March.
absolutely. And like to that point, you will have the experience in like a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then you'll know.
Yeah, that's true. It is nice that if you do want to pick up the full game, that like the progress from your demo goes over. Although now I kind of want to go back and try some of the different,
Yeah,
like take the quiz at the
get another
beginning and
quiz.
try some of the different questions and see which Pokemon. I might just use the demo forever to just like as like a mood ring.
How
Like
am I feeling
what
today? Oh,
exactly?
I'm a Pikachu today?
You can leave the house with confidence.
If you call me kind but timid this time. Look, I've also been playing Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. So much so, Mark, that I rolled credits on the game.
That is incredible.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. At just over 60 hours on the game clock, I beat the game. There is significant post credits content. It even kind of doesn't feel right to call it post game.
Mm-hmm.
But I have mixed feelings about what it is. And I do not wish to spoil anything
Sorry,
here.
you have mixed feelings about the post-game content?
About the post game content.
So sorry, before we get to that,
Yes.
because I'm very interested in hearing about it. You've talked on the show previously about just how generally positive your experience was with this game.
Yes.
And now that you've rolled credits, I just want to like do a gut check and make sure that that is still true and you feel like that it was a really great experience.
Really great experience. Heading into the end of the game, I cried multiple times, like genuinely moved by the characters and what they go through, and the world that they create together, the world that gets destroyed around them, and the world that they save together. I think it is a beautiful thing.
So highly recommend.
Highly recommended if you have any interest in a Dragon Quest game or any kind of old school JRPG. Like, play this one. It's so good. It's so fun. It's so funny, and the characters are amazing. I love them all. With the following caveat about the end of the game. So there, like I said, there's a point kind of like halfway through the game where your heroes more or less lose, right? And there's a big catastrophic event. Your party is scattered to the wind, and then you spend like the rest of the game putting your party back together and like challenging the bad guy to try and like set the world right again. And your characters through the course of that pay many hard prices, right? And the game in the latter half really doubles down on focusing on your player characters' relationships, either to each other or to other characters in the world, right? And a lot of those are family relationships, like sisters, brother, sister, father, son, and it's all like super moving and really, really great. And then when you beat the game and roll credits, then the game is like, hey, you have the ability to go back in time and change one of these things, go back in time and stop one of these horrible prices from being paid. And I don't know if I have the heart to do that, because the sacrifice as it played out through my gameplay meant so much.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
But do you have to?
I mean, do you have to anything? I can I've rolled credits on the game.
Meaning that like if you wanted to continue to play the post game content, is that like a requirement?
So I mean, at this point, I can continue rolling around the world as it is, and like finish up the side quests that I didn't already do. But like, there is more story content when you go back in time, because you can only send your hero back in time. And so like, he will meet up with your other party members at the point where you are meeting up with them, and then you have a chance to undo something. And I'm keeping all this very vague on purpose, because it's a wonderful experience, and I want everyone to just experience it as it comes upon them. But like, the idea that to do like the next beat of story to see what the game is like, because that is, it's not like, yes, it rolls credits, but then at the end it says to be continued and then starts right back up. So like, this game is its own sequel, or is like, it is, I think they're giving you an out, saying like, if you want this to be the end, it can be your end, and maybe it will be mine. I haven't really gone back in yet. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about there was a tragic loss, and like that's sort of the narrative of that story for me. And if I take that loss away, I don't know, it makes the whole thing feel less meaningful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That is really hard.
But I love the game. Thoroughly recommend it, and I'm sure I will. I am going to go back in and like actually do I'll probably start like a separate save,
Yeah.
so that I am not saving over my current progress. And I will continue to report back. Mark, did you have the opportunity to catch any awesome games done quick this last week?
I saw a little bit. I'm looking forward to catching up on YouTube. I watched a Mega Man team relay where I think they did like
was that the Mega Man 7 run?
It was like 4, 5, and 6, I think.
Okay.
And then they had like 3 teams, 3 different runners, each doing a game. It was interesting to watch. I think like the format probably would have been better if like because basically what happened is like once somebody gets so far ahead, it was really hard for anybody to, like the third team was always kind of out of it. So I think they should have done like a Jeopardy Greatest of All Time thing where it's like the team, everybody plays the first game, right? And then whichever team wins gets 1 point, and then so that way it's like easier for teams to like catch up.
I watched this Punch Out playthrough, which is 2 guys on 1 controller and they're both blindfolded.
So that's incredible.
Did
it go well?
Yeah, it went great. They won. I mean, they beat Mike Tyson. It was incredible. But yeah, it just really cool to see 2 guys holding 1 NES controller, so that like one guy's just got the D-pad and the other one's got the buttons. And I guess they kind of split start and select, right? Because you need to use select for the the uppercut, right? The star punch.
I don't remember.
All right.
I believe you. I 100% believe you.
Hey, here's the thing. As someone who never wrapped my head around any of the Punch-Out games, it's super impressive to see like the techniques that they used to like communicate with each other and to communicate with the game, because they're just going off of audio cues and like memorization at some point, and that's just awesome.
That's so cool.
And I'm sure that I'll see like other runs kind of like pulled out and elevated throughout the course of this week. But man, I love AGDQ. It's super fun to watch. All right, Mark, you ready to get into the new releases?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, this week is the first week that Nintendo's releasing a game in 2020.
Oh my gosh.
It is January 17th. We're getting Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Sharp FE, Encore.
Great. Is this a game that you believe that you will be picking up, Mark?
So in my heart of hearts, I believe that someday I will pick up this game.
Right.
Today is not that day, and Friday will not be that day, because I've told myself that I'm not buying any more games until I finish Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Wow. And it wasn't on your list of games that you played this week, so...
Right. I am not, like, making amazing progress on that front. Because I still have Fire Emblem Three Houses, plus I have Dragon Quest XI's.
Which, again, I've logged over 60 hours in.
And so the idea that I would be picking up, like, a third JRPG is laughable.
I agree.
To myself.
I'm laughing already.
I mean, it's a comedy show. And then finally on Friday, Dark Samus and Richter Amiibo are released. Every time we do new Amiibos released, I'm like, this has to be the end of the Smash series. But of course it's not, because it'll be endless, just like the DLC.
But this is the end of the characters.
Of the known ones.
Well, not of the known ones, because we still have all of the DLC characters, Joker and Banjo and the hero and Terry have those amiibo aren't out yet, but all of the original, the one that came with the game, and the Piranha Plant are all out at this point.
Gotcha.
Which is exciting that they're now what is that, 10 million amiibo?
At least, yeah, like 70 something. Although I guess like a lot of those were probably they didn't like re-release all of them,
Right.
or they didn't have like new ones,
Right, they weren't
Smash
like
Amiibo
new
for Mario
issue
and
of them,
stuff,
right?
yeah.
The only thing they really had to do was like go back and mop up the characters that had been from like previous games that were making a comeback, and the sort of like Shadow, like they put out a Peach amiibo, or not Peach so much as Daisy, and obviously Dark Samus right now as an Echo. She didn't have her own amiibo before.
I feel like, I mean, that's incredible. I feel like amiibo become so commoditized that I'm just like, oh, right, there's a snake amiibo.
Yeah.
Where I feel like that's a really cool thing that exists.
Yeah.
And I just feel overwhelmed by it.
And it's crazy to me that I'm like, I don't own that, and I'm not like ravenous for it.
Right.
I remember, this must have been well over a year ago now that I made the New Year's resolution to figure out my relationship with Amiibo, and I've done it. My relationship with them is I don't really buy them anymore.
I feel like it's with the Smash Amiibo, it's kind of the same way with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate itself. It's such an embarrassment of riches that I've kind of become immune to it.
Right. It doesn't seem impressive anymore.
Right. It's like all like modern technology where you're just like, of course cell phones exist. Of course they work. Whereas, like, you just take it for granted. I've just taken Smash Brothers Ultimate for granted completely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've still got a DLC character that's going to come out.
And then way more.
Yeah, exactly. It's just stuff is going to keep on coming. But I'm saying, like, at least one more in this pack that we know of.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's following in the, sort of pattern of the rest of them, it's going to have a ton of content with it. It's going to have a level and tons of music tracks. And, it's going to be a lot. But the point is the Dark Samus and Richter amiibos are out now. Mark, one thing I want to draw attention to here in the new releases is I don't know what's happening. I think the planets are aligning. Mercury is in whatever the opposite of retrograde is, because there are so many sales on Nintendo stuff at the moment. You can find a lot of it on the Nintendo eShop. Individual publishers are having sales. So like Ubisoft has a pretty big sale right now. Devolver Digital, the Sega Ages and Arcade Archives, a lot of them are on sale. And then also like Nintendo games are just like first party, like AAA Nintendo games are as much as 30% off on Amazon and on the eShop right now. Games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Kirby Star Allies, Yoshi's Crafted World, Splatoon 2, and Hyrule Warriors are all cheaper than they normally are.
Friend of the show, June, is playing through Rayman Legends right now, which is a title that I've heard really good things about.
Yeah.
He said it's on the eShop for, I think, $12 on sale. So kind of like, I feel like I should pick this up.
Yeah.
I have a weird mental block about non-Mario platformers or like non-Nintendo platformers, but this one has come such like highly recommended. I think I should try it out.
And I believe previous guest Greg Smith was speaking highly of it as well when in our music episode.
I couldn't remember if it was Legends or Origins.
So
which generically titled Rayman game is it?
It's Legends that he was talking up. Origins was the one that I had played. So that's how we were just not quite connecting with each other.
And that's why it lost.
That's why it lost. All right, Mark, are you ready to close out the segment?
Yeah, Yes. I've said, let's do it like so many times.
I got to stop asking you. I'm just going to say, and now we're closing out this segment. Now it's time for a regular segment on the show. It's time for 433. In 1952, American composer John Cage wrote a piece called 433, wherein a performer or a group of performers didn't play their instruments for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So for the purposes of this show, our instruments are talking about Nintendo. For the duration of one performance of 433, Mark and I will talk about something not at all Nintendo related, thus fulfilling the contract of the piece. Mark, you mentioned it earlier, but let's talk about the Jeopardy Greatest of All Time tournament. For those who don't know, this tournament is bringing back some legendary Jeopardy players, including Ken Jennings, who has the record for the most consecutive games of Jeopardy played, and Brad Rutter, who has the record for most money won in Jeopardy. It's like $4.5 million. And James Holzhauer, who is the most recent person to
the thing they're like saying that he has the most records or something.
Yes. Well, and one of those records is his one-day total. And like the previous one-day total was something like 76,000 or something like that. And his record is over 130,000.
Crazy.
Like he almost doubled it. And he did this a couple nights like in a row was just like kept breaking the record, kept going higher and higher. So this is the primetime lineup of the three of these guys. And it's the first to win 3 matches, and a match is made up of 2 back-to-back games. And so the first 3 of them happened last week, and the second half of the tournament is going to happen this week. It could end tonight, Tuesday night.
Right.
Could be the end of it because Ken is up 2 games. James has 1, and Brad has 0.
Which is kind of crazy because previous to this, like, Brad had dominated Ken every single time they've been up against each other.
In tournament play, for whatever reason, like, Brad is usually just really, really good, really fast, really smart. But Ken has been stomping.
Well, and Brad also, I mean, James has been giving Ken a run for his money.
Yeah.
And then Brad has just had a really rough go of it.
Yeah, really poor luck. Well, so one of the things that I find most interesting is that James has had this effect on the other 2 guys, where James is a professional sports gambler. So when on his original run on the show and in this tournament and in another tournament of champions, he always goes all in on daily doubles. He bets his total score and does it every time. And it's awesome. It's this amazing spectacle. And both Ken and Brad have adopted this strategy because they have to.
Right, because otherwise the totals, like James's lead goes so like over the top.
Yeah, astronomical, 130,000,
Yeah.
like, it's such a high score, and like he can do it with 1 daily double.
But it's also funny to watch them like play the board.
Yes.
Because like in Double Jeopardy, they are immediately just trying to get the daily doubles.
Oh yeah, they're going for $16 and $1,200 clues.
Yeah.
Like just skipping through the categories. It's the kind of thing that makes me wonder why normal people don't play the game strategically like that.
And I mean, the people who win do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But this whole thing has been such a delight because
Yes.
they're all having so much fun.
Yeah, and they're like so chill and comfortable about it.
Yeah.
And like they'll razz each other a little bit, and yeah, I love it. I've have been following James on Twitter since his run on the show like last year. And now I'm following all 3 of them, and they just give each other so much crap. I love it.
Yeah, they also give I'm blanking on his name for whatever
Alex?
reason. Yeah, Alex Trebek, the host. They give him a lot of crap too, and like he gives it back. Like it's just really fun. Like the stakes are high, and you can tell that there's pressure, but they're all such pros.
Yes.
They've done it so many times that and they've been on the show so many times, and they know Alex. Like that. It has just been a lot of fun.
Yeah. One thing I will note, Alex Trebek not looking great during these shows.
Which makes a ton of sense.
Because he's dying of pancreatic cancer,
Yeah.
which is horrible. But so it also feels like it's like a different person doing his makeup, or like the lighting is different.
It's very
or
like
something.
orange,
Yeah.
or like it feels very cakey. But
He's in poor health.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's easy to forgive because you're like, who knows how much longer he'll be the host of Jeopardy? Who knows how much longer he'll be around at all?
Yeah.
And so this feels like such a wonderful kind of like opportunity to just like say bye.
Yeah, and like celebrate him and celebrate the show.
Yeah.
I have long thought that when Alex Trebek retires, that Ken Jennings should take the host role.
That is such a good call. I am 100% on
right?
board for that.
Because like he's got the like background on any of the clues that they're gonna ask. Like I'm always surprised that like Alex seems to know the trivia facts. But then like he's also just got like an easy manner about him. His brand is already Jeopardy, and Jeopardy is already like the Ken Jennings brand. Like they're already together.
That's such a good call. I'm going to be a little bit upset if that doesn't happen now.
I don't know who else would do it.
I
Who
know.
else should carry on? And they can't just stop with Jeopardy, right?
No, there's no way.
And it also wouldn't really make sense for either Brad could maybe be the new host, but like Holtower,
No.
I don't think that would.
God love him, but
God
no.
love him, but no. He's too good at playing the game.
Yeah.
All right. That's maybe the most perfectly timed 433 we've ever done. Thank you to the ensemble at the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix. Mark, let's get into the news. I'm not going to ask you if you want to.
There was, of course, a Pokemon Direct.
A Pokemon Direct.
So on Thursday last week, there was this Pokemon Direct that had 2 big Pokemon announcements.
Mm-hmm.
First, like we mentioned earlier, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX was announced for Switch, and the game is coming on March 6th, which I find a little bit befuddling.
Tell me why.
In the sense that Animal Crossing comes out on March 20th.
Yes.
Like, throw us a bone. Put it sometime in February.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like something that they are doing just to do, right? Like it doesn't it doesn't feel like I mean, unless I'm like totally off base, I don't know that anyone's like, "Oh yeah, I get to play Mystery Dungeon again." Like, is this a Pokemon Snap for someone? Is this a Pokemon Stadium for someone? Or is it just like a formality that like they have a Pokemon product that they can put out?
No, I mean, I'm sure there are people who are excited for this. For me, and this is my baggage, not theirs, but to me it's like just put a game in February. Put it in February. So there's like
Sure.
a release, like a first party release every month in these first 3 months.
Just to space them out.
Yeah. Just to make us feel better about the calendar. But again, that's my baggage. Again, it's a remake of a GBA DS game from 2005, and it combines the red team and blue team versions of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon into one. There's, of course, some quality of life improvements and including like autoplay and best move features. It is a full price game, $60. Again, comes out on March 6th.
How do you feel about that price point?
Again, like I'm not planning on buying it, so
Great point.
I kind of feel indifferent to it. I think clearly maybe not in the same league, but also kind of in the same league as like the Link's Awakening remake, and that just seems to be, like what first party Nintendo physical release is going to cost.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested to like kind of compare what the original games look like to what this game looks like. I don't think the art style or anything here like is anywhere near what they did to Link's Awakening. But like the point remains that in both cases it feels a little strange to pay $60 for a remake of a Game Boy or Game Boy Advance game. But I mean, you can either bite that bullet and play it or not.
Yeah, by the same token, maybe it's like one of those things where they're like, I guess we could charge $40 for it, but is that really going to cause sales to be significantly greater?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
That's a great point. I like the people who are going to be excited about this are going to be excited about it either way.
Yeah. And then second, definitely the bigger news is that Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield are getting an expansion pass.
Very exciting.
This is a big deal because previously the expectation would be that you were going to get a third version, like Pokemon Yellow, or that you would get a like Black 2, White 2, or Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon type situation where you're either getting a third game or a direct sequel or something to that effect.
Right, and they specifically called that out during the Direct, saying that this is in place of that. So we're not going to see, or at least they're saying right now, that you're not going to see new versions of these games. You're just going to see the expansion passes for them. So to that end, the expansion pass is $30, and you can only buy it as a pass, like as a set,
kind of like the Zelda DLC.
Yep, and like the Mario Kart DLC too, right?
Fire Emblem.
Yeah, like all of it.
Yeah.
That this is just like how Nintendo is doing it. You can't buy stuff piecemeal. They're just like, you buy all of it or none of it. And so it's coming out in 2 different sets. The first one is the Isle of Armor, which is coming out in June, and then the Crown Tundra coming out in the fall.
Right. So the Pokemon UK tweeted that the Isle of Armor was inspired by the Isle of Man, and then the Crown Tundra was inspired by Scotland.
So I read that too, and I don't know if I buy it, right? Because yeah, okay, it is cooler in Scotland, but it's a tundra, like, right? Like it doesn't look Scottish to me. And similarly, the Isle of Man looks like, it doesn't look like the Isle of Man. The Isle of Armor looks like Japan. There's like a dojo.
Loosely inspired,
okay,
shall we say.
Right.
Okay, so the expansion, in addition to having new content, all that kind of stuff, will also be introducing or reintroducing over 200 new Pokemon to the Galar region Pokedex.
Right. And so these will be Pokemon that will be catchable within the areas to people who have purchased the expansion passes. But if you have not purchased the expansion passes, the Pokemon are still gettable in the game if you're either transferring them from Pokemon Home or if you are trading for them.
Right.
So while that doesn't, complete a national Pokédex, it does bring it, up from 400 to somewhere over 600. Still, about 200 shy of a full dex. But they're making strides towards that. And sort of, to me at any rate, leaves the door open to them putting more Pokemon in. Even after that, in a way that I was not expecting.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'm not surprised they're doing it. I'm pleasantly surprised that they're doing it so soon.
Yeah.
And I personally think this is a very smart and fair way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, yeah, these they'll be available. Like you can catch them if you buy the DLC. But if you already have them from previous games, which is what a lot of people wanted in the first place, you'll be able to transfer them over from Pokemon Home.
Yeah, I mean the thing about that it is still like it's nice that you are able to do that. It still doesn't like address the the catch them all philosophy of it, that like they're getting closer, but it's still not all. You know what I mean? Which I mean I've always been fine with it. But it seems like a weird half measure to be like, you can get more, but still not all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess so. Again, as somebody who like never cared about it in the first place,
this is a great point.
Like it continues to not bother me.
Do you want to talk about these new areas separately here?
Sure. Yeah. So we get the Isle of Armor,
mm-hmm.
and which introduces a new mentor named Mustard.
Right.
And
who is clearly like a dojo, leader. He is
from the Isle of Man.
Okay, but I'm saying that's not what the Isle of Man is like.
And you also get some new trainers to act as rivals, and like in the gyms in the full base game, they are different depending on the version.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also a new legendary Pokemon that you get in the Isle of Armor, who is Cub Fu. He's like a karate bear, and he evolves into Urshifu. Two different types, which one is a fighting dark type Pokemon, the other one is fighting water. And they're non-specific at this point as to how it evolves into one form or the other. But so that's kind of cool that in addition to restoring some Pokemon from previous games, there's also new, legitimate new Pokemon.
And then Crown Tundra introduces a new co-op gameplay mechanic, and plus like a bunch of legendary Pokemon. I guess new and returning seem to be.
So there is a new Pokemon that is the Calyrex, which is a psychic grass type Pokemon. But then it's not really. It looks like maybe there are Galarian versions of some of the legendaries, like the legendary birds from Gen 1. But they showed, like, to my eyes, all of the legendary Pokemon that are coming back. And then, there are also those, like, weird kind of, like, golem-looking creatures with, like, different numbered dots on them, which seem to correspond with, like, the ruins in the area. So, yeah, I mean, that'll be one of those that we get more info on it as we get closer, I'm sure.
But the Crown Tundra seems to be really co-op focused, with like the focus being on these co-op raids.
Yeah.
Where you get the legendary Pokemon. So both expansions, my like understanding based on the video and everything is that the full area of the expansions are going to be like the wild area, in that you can freely control the camera. So they won't be like routes or the towns in the base game where the camera's static and you move within it. It seems like the entirety of the expansions are going to be like the wild area, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and is one of the more like novel and interesting parts about the base game. So yeah, I'm all about them introducing more wild area-esque areas.
The expansion also comes with new player customization options. They showed off like a bunch of new hairstyles.
Oh yeah.
You'll be able to choose like or buy different bikes, change your uniform, like all that kind of stuff. And if you pre-purchase the expansion pass, you get Eevee and Pikachu uniforms.
So you mentioned already that you think that this is a good and smart way for them to do this. Um, is there any part of you that, I think it's a little bit weird that even in doing these expansion passes, that Shield has one experience and Sword has another one. That like if you did really want to have like a complete Pokemon Sword and Shield experience, you've got to buy both games and both passes. That is, then like $180 investment, which isn't really, you could also like just get Pokemon Yellow and have the entire like Pokemon, Gen 1 experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. But then in that instance, if you already have the two games,
yeah,
and you had to buy the third version, you'd still be spending $60.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and that's obviously like this sort of like completionist mindset of like getting all of those things. It and ultimately, I guess I don't really have.
I mean, I do wonder, just like functionally, how it works on the eShop. Like, are you purchasing it twice? Or I guess when you buy the expansion, is there the expansion for Shield?
Yes.
And the expansion for Sword?
Yes.
And you just have to choose which one you buy.
That's correct.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
I guess it's also a little bit weird in that like, Pokemon is always such a like kid focused franchise that like, they're not about like in-game purchases and stuff. But that someone will need to have a credit card or like Nintendo points or whatever to buy this expansion.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like you don't necessarily, like if you're a kid who's playing, like experiencing Pokemon,
yeah,
you're not really losing out on anything.
Yeah, totally.
If you aren't able to get the expansion, again, like, I don't know. To me, this feels like a very smart way, like a very modern way to handle like these like idea of third versions. It also gives them more breathing room, right? Because then they're not tied to trying to create a new game every year, and so you just have like more breathing room in the schedule, and they're able to support Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield for a longer period of time. So it just like sustains the investment that they've already made, which I guess maybe is like a cynical business way to look at it, but I think it's good for players too.
Yeah, well, and I also think from like the early adopter standpoint too, that like just experientially you have played through the game, either all of it or as much as you were going to play through it, and then you get more content that you can then start to engage with your current save file without transferring Pokemon over to another thing.
And you don't have to go through the story again.
You don't have to go through the story again. Because that was people's big complaint
about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is you had to go through the entire narrative all over again before you could get to the new content.
Yeah.
And for the like, I guess like not most casual players, because most casual players wouldn't buy like the third version anyways. But for most people, you're only spending the $30.
Yeah.
Right, instead of $60 for a whole new game, which half of which you've really care about because you've already played.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes perfect sense. And like I said, sort of leaves the door open for the idea that they can continue to make improvements on it and treat the new generation of Pokemon like a platform.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is obviously what we've seen in Smash, and what we would like to see in like Mario Kart or whatever. So like, yeah, I like this more than I am like turned off by the idea.
I am feeling like the narrative that we've had for a really long time that like Game Freak is super conservative has kind of gone out the window in the Switch era a little bit. I mean, yeah, they haven't created a Pokemon MMO. They're not going crazy, but it's like we saw Pokemon Let's Go, which is, kind of like an experiment.
Yeah.
And then we've seen Shield, which changed a lot of things about what we thought were always going to be true about Pokemon. They've basically, this generation, completely moved away from random battles.
Yeah.
Like, they still kind of happen in Pokemon Sword and Shield, but for the most part, they're completely avoidable.
Yeah.
Which is, like, to me, a huge change for the better.
Yeah, and something that I feel like people are almost taking for granted because it originally showed up in Let's Go.
Right.
That, like, it's something that in any discussion of Sword and Shield is like, oh, and obviously we've done away with this, but it's like, no, that's a huge,
like, fundamental change.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, it would have been very easy to say that, oh, we're going to see a third version of Sword and Shield because that's what we've seen in the past, or a direct sequel or something. Like, the Game Freak isn't ready to lose the revenue stream and just do DLC, but that is what they've done. So I think they are iterative, but I feel like we've seen a ton of change this year.
Although I do think it is not outside the realm of possibility that in like 2 years we see another version of Sword and Shield that is all of the content all packaged into one for $60.
Nintendo hasn't seemed, and obviously Game Freak and Pokemon Company kind of does their own thing, but Nintendo hasn't seemed, I think we talked about this last week, that interested in doing that sort of like Game of the Year edition type stuff.
Yeah, no, that is true. But I mean, if it gives them an opportunity to, sell it one more time, again, just calling back to what I said before, that like even in the expansion passes, there's one trainer for the Isle of Armor for Sword and another one for Shield.
Right.
And both those characters appear in the game now, like with the most recent update, along with a Galarian Slowpoke. So like, they're already like kind of trickling it into the games now. And I like it when games get updated like this. So, it seems like a meaningful update.
In an interview with US Gamer,
Sorry, one more piece of information.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, right. Pokemon Home.
Yes. That's it, basically. Pokemon Home, they mentioned that it is coming out in February, and the Direct didn't have any information, but it did say keep an eye out for more information coming soon.
In an interview with US Gamer, Alexei Pajadov, the creator of Tetris, praised Tetris 99. He called it, quote, an absolutely great title.
Mm-hmm. And that's accurate.
He's not wrong. According to NPD's Matt Piscatella, more than 1,480 titles were released on Switch last year in America. That's over 400 more than PS4 and Xbox One had combined.
That's a lot of games.
It is a lot of games.
Although, if judging on the percentage of game titles that we actually read when we're looking at the new release
or have
list,
any idea what they are,
it seems like there's a lot of, I don't want to say shovelware necessarily, but like a lot of.
I think that's 100% true, but to me, that's the sign of a like healthy platform.
Yes,
like you don't want it to be all that, but the DS had that, the Wii had that, the NES had that. Anytime that there's a large audience, it didn't really have that is like the Wii U.
Oh yes. No, almost nothing came to the Wii U.
Which it's just kind of amazing how quickly Nintendo's fortunes have radically changed.
Yes,
in the past 3 years.
I mean, of course, that is after another radical change in the opposite direction from the Wii era to the Wii U.
Right.
So, I mean, it's Nintendo's always trying stuff. They're going to be up and down forever.
According to research company Sensor Tower, Pokemon Go enjoyed its best year for revenue in 2019.
What world do we live in where that's true?
It earned, according to them, $894 million in gross player spending. The second best year was its launch year, 2016, where it earned $832 million.
Pretty remarkable stuff.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Sensor Tower. They've got the mobile games market analysis locked down. Anytime we talk about any Nintendo mobile game or how they're doing, it is 100% Sensor Tower. And they got the raw data, but they're also like, this is interesting that it's the most that it's ever earned in the last 3 years.
It is. Also, we have no idea how accurate their information is.
I'm going to assume completely.
All right. We got a little bit of more news about Super Nintendo World, the theme park land coming to Universal Studios around the world, but first in Japan, presumably before the 2020 Olympics in just a few months. We were kind of expecting, or at least I was expecting, to get a opening date, a little bit more information. But really, what the presentation seemed to be was all about the connectivity.
Yeah, well, and it's even less of a presentation and more of just a trailer, right?
Right.
And a trailer that's almost more of a conceptual hype reel.
Well,
almost.
They did have in Japan, they had a representative from Universal Creative talk through it a little bit.
Okay.
But really the only information that we got was a little bit on Twitter from the presentation and then the music video that they released.
Yeah. So I recommend everyone go check out this music video because it is strange if nothing else. And the song's a bop. Like, it's pretty cool. But what are we really able to like take out of that trailer? Like,
So,
what did we really learn?
yeah, I guess like the big things we learned is that the whole idea of the land is that you are like participating in the entire land as a game.
Yeah.
If you've been to either Disney's Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World or Disneyland and visited Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars land, they do connectivity through something called a data pad, which is you download the Play Disney app on your phone, and then you can interact with certain elements of the land. It seems like Super Nintendo World is doing something similar in a little bit of a different vein, but like they show off an app. There's a map of the land, and then points marked with like coins or something where you know that you can go and interact with it.
Yeah.
To earn points yourself, they showed off these like
a little
bracelets.
wrist. Yeah.
That presumably have like an RFID reader or something, Bluetooth, that allows you to like interact with the land and then collect coins. To what end, we don't really know yet, but they're really hyping up the aspect that like you will be able to play in the land, like the whole thing is a game. So it'll be interesting to see how that manifests.
And I really like that at Disney, like the Galaxy's Edge, like datapad stuff is really interesting, and also sort of like opened my eyes to the fact that they have a bunch of that kind of stuff around the park that's not
right.
Star Wars related.
Yeah, I didn't really realize like you're just waiting in line at Peter Pan and you can like do stuff.
Right. We were stuck in line at Space Mountain for a while, and it has like a bunch of games that you can play with everyone that you're waiting with. And then also, like, you can look around for like little runes that are like carved into the thing around the line, and like enter those in. So like there are really cool ways to integrate it to just sort of make the more mundane parts of being at a theme park bearable. But I think that the Galaxy's Edge stuff is a pretty good template for like how to make it something you actively want to engage with. One of my complaints about it at Galaxy's Edge is that being in that environment is so cool that I sort of hate that I'm encouraged to just look down at my phone, which I do for too many hours on any day anyway, and feel horrible about. But so like I wonder how that's going to feel at Super Nintendo Land.
Yeah, and I only did the Galaxy's Edge thing a little bit, but to me, one of the reasons that it didn't really connect with me is like I'm doing these things, but to what end?
Yeah,
and
I collect stuff,
right? And I feel like that that it would be the question at Super Nintendo World, for me anyways, is like why would I participate in this instead of like you were saying just like enjoying the land for this beautifully rendered like world that it is. I honestly at this point am so confused as to what's been like confirmed by Universal and what is just like well known but not official, and then what's completely rumored. But the music video, if nothing else, seems to confirm if Universal hasn't already, that there's going to be a Mario Kart ride.
Yes.
And where you'll go through Bowser's Castle, if nothing else. Yeah. And then a like Yoshi ride where you will ride on the back of Yoshi. It looks like it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are suckers for both theme parks and for Mario stuff. So like, yeah, I'm excited.
We know that it's coming to Japan this year, and then it'll roll out at Universal's other parks in the order of Universal Studios Hollywood, where it's already under construction. Again, Universal has said nothing about it, but there's enormous steel coming out of the ground where it's going in the bottom part of the back lot, and then the lower lot, and then it'll come to Florida, and then Universal Studios Singapore. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, me too.
Sony revealed to GameIndustry.biz that they will not be attending E3 in 2020. They also didn't attend last year's show.
Yeah, so you might say, hey, wait a minute. That's about Sony and about PlayStation. This is a Nintendo show. I think it just kind of taking the temperature of E3 here for this year. There'd already sort of been rumblings about like them reformatting the convention to like maybe make it more of a fan-focused show, or they don't really know what the future of E3 is, let alone the present. This last year, the hall that Nintendo is in was sort of barren, right? Like Nintendo had a big fun presence, and there were a couple other publishers right up front. But with Microsoft and Sony missing from that hall, it felt big and weird and empty.
Yeah.
And I expect that this year will be much the same, right? Last year with Sony pulling out, Nintendo was like, oh yeah, we always expect to go to E3, and I wonder for how many more years that will be true. Do you think Nintendo goes this year?
I think they go. I do think they go this year. I think Xbox continues to do their thing at like LA Live.
Yeah, which is just across the street.
Yeah, but yeah, it really makes you wonder because part of it's just like what value are companies like this getting out of it anymore? Like, yes, you could make it. E3 is just weird now because it's this unholy hybrid of a fan convention that's not really a fan convention versus and this like industry business convention, and I feel like it needs to be one or the other. And if it wants to be a fan expo, because you saw people at E3, a couple of people at E3 like doing cosplay, which was super fun, but it also felt out of place.
Yeah,
and it's like, I would love for it to become like a PAX or something where that is encouraged, but I don't know that it needs to be, or really that's
right,
E3's
like,
place.
PAX already exists.
Yeah,
a bunch of them.
Right.
And like when we were, making plans to see various games last year, like we wanted to see the Final Fantasy VII remake demo. And, we had to make a point to like go in early before it was opened up to fans when it was like just press and to like make our appointment for it. And, even that, it was still like we were able to make an appointment. But the lines just get long. And as soon as it's open to the fans too, then you can take, I mean, how long were we in line for Link's Awakening? Like 2 hours?
Yeah,
something like that. Took a real long time. So like, which isn't to be like, well, the fans are in my way, because largely that's what I consider myself, even though I know we're going there to like talk about it on the show. But it's just it's a weird and interesting thing, and Sony sort of reiterating that they're not going, and maybe this is just still in like a lead up to the next generation, that like they want to control when they're actually showing stuff off, and don't want to be pressured to have something ready by the end of May. That maybe makes a little bit of sense, but I kind of suspect they're never coming back to E3.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it was Kat Bailey of US Gamer on Twitter, but if it wasn't her, I think it was somebody else, that they were saying that this kind of leaves third-party publishers in a potentially weird spot, because if Sony doesn't do their full PlayStation 5 blowout before E3, then these third parties will have next-gen titles that they may not, like, how do you talk about them? How do you position them?
I mean, I wonder if people just are going to be, because like we have had a few games that have been confirmed for next-generation hardware, that maybe they'll just be like, maybe we'll see PlayStation 5 logos on stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Or, if also, like, Sony themselves have talked about PlayStation 5, right? Like, it's not really this big unknown. Like, last year they were doing sit-downs with Wired.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not that weird.
They showed off the logo at CES last week, so.
The most liked gaming image ever on Instagram, he says, through vomit at his teeth.
Yeah, I hate that is a fact that we both know. Why do we know that? And now our listeners know it too.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Finally, Nintendo of Japan produces a recruitment booklet for prospective employees, and the most recent one includes original artwork. Somebody recently drew official artwork featuring Wart, the villain of Super Mario Bros. 2, and as always, we endorse any and all Wart content.
So you heard it here, the final Smash Fighter for the Fighters Pack, confirmed to be Wart.
Isn't he already a trophy?
Who cares?
Yeah, not me.
You can be both.
Yep.
Look. I want... Nintendo needs to drive right back to Doki Doki Panic and just make another Super Mario Bros. 2. That's all I want. It'd be so good.
That would be so good.
All right, Mark, let's close out the news. That's going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate and review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter. We love it when you do that. Mark, we love it.
I love it.
On Twitter, I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Nincart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Eller saying praise Wart, and thank you for listening.
I'm Kate Thompson.
And I'm Mark David Christensen. And together we host Crap, a Hellboy podcast.
The show dedicated to the half-demon hero brought forth by writer-artist Mike Mignola and published by Dark Horse Comics.
Each week we discuss everything Hellboy.
Plus his expanded universe with the BPRD, Abe Sapien, Lobster Johnson, and many more.
That's Crap, a Hellboy podcast on Campfire Media or wherever you get your podcasts.
Campfire.